Hello, my name is Bradley and I'm your host of The Internal Game. Today I want to talk a little bit about freedom and choice and creating like new meaning and new story in your life, okay? So I know that we have been taught a lot that like we are the only ones with free will, right? No one else has it in our reality, just us, right? And there is some truth to this, right? But if we are identified with mind, and what that means is like identifying with every thought that we get and living predominantly in the mind and just like getting one thought and believing it, getting another thought, believing it, getting a thought opposite of that, believing it. Oh, getting chaotic, right? At that point, we don't have free will because we are in the mind's grips, right? We're just doing what the mind says at that point, right? So we are not running our life anymore. We are being ran by our mind, right? Or pretty much we are a human mind pretending to be a human being at that point. We want to get out of this, right? I've studied many things, I've practiced many things throughout my life, and the most important step that anyone can make is to start to disidentify with mind and realize that you are not your mind, right? And what this looks like is the mind-made self, right? You have these views on what you are, what you've been through, why you are the way that you are, how people are, how the world is, all this stuff, right? Creating this identity for yourself. And a lot of times in these communities, we find out that if we change our identity, we change our life. And this is true. But it's still an identity nonetheless, made up by the mind, and it's not who you are, right? And anytime that we're just shifting to another identity, even if it's a more favorable one, yes, we're going to experience, I guess, what you would consider more favorable circumstances because it's still a reflection of you, right? And who you're being. Even if it's an identity, it doesn't necessarily matter. But it still comes with mental positions. It still comes with I'm right, you're wrong. It still comes with this is how things are, and anyone that's not that is wrong. Like it comes with fear of the identity being threatened. It comes with fear of losing things still. Like nonetheless, it's still an identity, right? Made up in the mind. At this point, you are identified with the mind, the human mind, pretending to be a human being. Right. So if we actually want choice, right, if we actually want the freedom to create new meaning, create new stories, to start dictating our life the way that we want to, we have to take our power back, our consciousness back from identification with mind. Now, there's nothing wrong, and I promise you this, there's nothing wrong with using your mind as a creative tool to create awesome experiences, to create new meaning, new story, all this stuff, right? But if we think we are our mind, we will suffer. So we want to, like I've talked about many times before, like just a thought, right? I can't put enough importance on realizing things, like realizing thoughts are just that. They are just thoughts. And if we don't realize that, then what this looks like is like, let's just say you're on an SP journey, right? And you're trying to manifest an SP. I just want the way everybody can be clear here. You get a thought, like you haven't heard from your person, and you get a thought and it's like, I haven't heard from them. I wonder what they're doing. What if they're out with somebody else? And then you latch onto this thought because you're believing that you're your mind and your mind's controlling you, right? And you start getting anxious because you're believing these thoughts. And then you're starting to feel powerless. Powerless. That's what you're feeling like at this point. And you're going to get another thought from this anxious place. It's like, I need to text them and let them know that I have boundaries, and I need to text them and let them know that they can't do this to me, or whatever. And then you do it. And what's actually happening is you have an unconscious idea. What you're actually wanting to do is to get some form of safety, some form of response from them that they're like, hey, you know what? Like, you're right. I should have done that. I love you. Miss you. Da da da. And that's what you're hoping for, right? And you send the text, and then you don't hear back from them. You don't hear anything. Then, because you're so identified with mind, you get another thought that's like, oh, I should have done that. What if I ruined things, right? And then you're like, oh no, I shouldn't have said that. Oh no, what if they think this, or what if that was like the last straw? And nonetheless, it's just like still chaotic because you are identified with mind. At this point, does it sound like you have much choice here? Does it sound like you have much freedom? Does it feel like you have much choice? Does it feel like you have much freedom? Right? And this could be the same thing with anything. How I'm going to respond at my job to let my boss know that I'm not playing around, right? Then you do it. You're like, oh, I wonder if they. What if I made it worse? Like, what if they fire me? Because you latch onto that thought too, right? So we want to start the process of disidentifying with every thought that we get, and we can do this by it's just a thought. This is going to bring you stability. I promise you. It's going to bring you stability, some awareness, and you're going to be able to see the insanity that you've been entertaining, right? Because the mind is not you. So an example I want to give here is like, we say that we're God, right? Like, oh, we find out we're God and all this cool stuff, right? And let's just say there's this God that created the heavens and the earth and everything in between, right? And he's like, hey, I'm gonna play this little game. I'm gonna go down there to Earth, or wherever Earth is. Maybe it's out there. Who knows? I'm gonna go to Earth, and I'm going to be a human for a little while. And the plan is to awaken. The plan is to remember who I am, that I'm God. I'm not gonna have anything really helping me. My best bet is suffering, right? But nonetheless, like I'm going to remember. So this is God. This is like the everything, the all, right? In a human form, and he's walking around. And because of the unconscious activity here in Earth and the way that we're taught and everyone's in the mind, all this stuff, right? This God is walking around as a human, believing that he is his thoughts, believing that she is her thoughts, right? Whatever you want to call it, but believing God is his thoughts. Yeah, right? And he's like, man, I don't understand. Like, I think I don't know why I'm so tired. I don't know why I am so stressed out. I don't know why I'm whatever. Like, I'm God, right? Like, how would he be in connection with who he is? Like, why do you think that he is stressed out? Why do you think that he's not feeling like himself? Why do you think that he is depressed? Why do you think that he's anxious? Why do you think that he's just like I don't feel comfortable in my skin? Like, I need something. I need somebody, right? It's because he's God, and he thinks that he is a human mind, right? And then he finds some type of some type of video, maybe a book, and it tells him, hey, you're God. And God's like, oh, cool, I'm God. I can do whatever I want. I'm God. And then he's like, well, why am I still stressed out? Why is the person still not here? Why is the money not here? Like, I know I'm God. Why is it not working out? Like, why am I still so fearful? Well, it's because now he's believing that he's God with still identified with the human mind. He's just saying that he's God now, right? He doesn't know what that means because he's still identified with a human mind. He's going to have to get out of the human mind to actually realize who he is, because the mind can't think about this. The mind doesn't understand this. The mind's still just playing an identity game. If it's identified, right? If you're identified with it, pretty much. Identity. So this is you. This is what's happening with you. You've spent your life believing that you're your thoughts, believing that you're everyone else's thoughts, believing that you are this little me, this little identity. And you started your search for fulfillment and relationships and jobs and money and being good at something, right? To get seen and heard, all these things. You started your search. And then the suffering became too much, right? You lost a person, lost a job, all these things happened. Man, you're tired of being in the same scenarios over and over again. You find law of assumption, you find law of attraction, you find something. And it's like, hey, you're God. You're creating things with your thoughts, right? And you're like, oh, okay, all I got to do is change my thoughts now. And then you jump into an identity, still a mind-made identity that's saying it's God now. And you're like, all I have to do is change my thoughts. Now you're beating yourself up because you're like, man, I can't change my thoughts. It's hard to do. Like, I'm getting all these negative ones. And like, and I'm believing them because I'm still identified with mine, and it's scaring the shit out of me. But I know I'm God, and like, this is so stressful now. So now I'm trying to do positive affirmations and try to tell positive stories, but like, it's just not believable because like, I keep buying into all this stuff over here. I keep getting these negative thoughts. I don't know what to do. Because it's still mind identification. It's still being scared of thought. It's still believing that you are thought. Right? So we want, and again, there's no choice here. There's a little bit. There's no freedom. Like you are a prisoner of mind. You are God that doesn't remember he's God because he's identified with mind, or she's identified with mind, and pretty much taken hostage by identification with mind. And then trying to change the problem with the problem. Trying to fix a problem with the problem by becoming a more favorable problem, right? Because it's still not who you are. So we want to actually give ourselves some freedom, and we can only do this by literally getting out of the mind for just a little while, just enough to create some space to show you that this is like that you are God. Then you can retreat back here as much as you need to keep building this gap between you and identification with mind and incessant thinking, right? Because that's what's really keeping you down. That's what's really got you depressed. That's what's really got you anxious, because you're believing some whatever thought in the future that does not exist. Time, psychological time, and mind are inseparable. Inseparable. They go like this. They go hand in hand. So if you're regretting the past, you're in the mind. If you're anticipating the future, you're in the mind. Right? You're not in the eternal now where God is. I mean, you are. Your body is. Right? But what you're identified with, where you're putting all your energy, is not. Even though it's happening in the now. Right? So again, we want to give ourselves some freedom, because it's actually what we are. We want to actually start to realize this God within, because that's actually what we are. We actually want to start having some choice about how we're going to do things and actually create intentionally on purpose. But we can only do this when we get out of the mind. Because when we start getting out of the mind, doing things like, oh, that's just a thought. That's just a thought. Yeah, there's a lot of momentum going. There is. If you have spent your entire life identified with thoughts and worried about this and worried about that, what if this happens? What about that? What about this? Oh, this person's doing this. Oh, this person's not doing this. I need to do this before I get this, and this over here has to happen, and now I'm trying to manipulate. All this stuff, there's a lot of momentum. You're used to buying in to the mind. That's why people don't want to give up their suffering, right? It's because they would have to give up their self. They would have to give up their identities, because a lot of their identities is actually based around suffering. So we want to take a look at this, right? Bring some awareness to this and say, wow, like I'm 100% in the mind. I am fearful of all my thoughts. I am anxious. I am depressed. I am all these things. And it doesn't feel like I have any choice, and it doesn't feel like I have any freedom, even though I just found out that I'm God. Even though I just found out that I create my reality, you would think that that'd just be this bright light moment, and things would have been the easiest that they've been ever. But it wasn't. Because I'm still identified with the actual problem. And the problem is thinking that you are a human mind. So, when we start to say things like just a thought, just a thought, just a thought, we'll bring some stability to ourselves. Then we'll start to prove to ourselves that we don't have to believe everything that we think. This is wonderful. Right? Talk about Neville's, isn't it wonderful? No, this is actually wonderful. Because we're going to start to realize that we're not our mind. And then we're going to get more connected with what we actually are. And then from there, we actually have some freedom to think how we want to think. From there, we actually have some choice to like, hey, I'm going to create a new meaning. I can create whatever meaning I want to, because I'm not scared now. I'm no longer fearful, because I'm not buying into every thought. I don't need something to be different, because I feel whole and complete right now. I can create whatever meaning I want. I can tell a new story. I can literally do whatever I want with my mind, because I'm using it now and it's not using me, because I'm no longer highly identified with it. Granted, it's a process, but it's a process that needs to begin, because until then, we don't really have the free will that we think. Until then, the mind is using us and we're not using the mind. Because the mind is chaotic. Think about all the different thoughts that you have in a day. If you're identified with every thought that you get, How stable do you think that you're going to be? How much of God do you think you're actually going to feel within? Well, you know. I was talking to somebody the other day, and they said, what do you do? And I was like, yeah, I try to teach presence. I teach presence. And I was like, sometimes it comes in the form of trying to manifest something, but nonetheless, I don't care what people want to manifest. It doesn't necessarily matter. I'll tell them how to do it, but I actually hope that they can walk away with knowing that it's about them, and then it's about the God-like being within them, the presence within them. That's what they're actually looking for. Everything else is just these little cherries on top. Everything else is just the cherry on top, right? Like this is the real deal, like the presence part. Because if you're not present, if you're identified with mind, you have abandoned self. You have abandoned your God self, and now you're a mind. And no wonder you feel chaotic. And no matter what we think, like no matter what identity we want to create with the mind that we are God now, it's still not what you think. Like think about that. Like if that was all you were supposed to do, was to realize that you were God with your mind, then why are you still suffering? Why are you still chaotic? Why are you still worried and fearful? Like, wouldn't the day that you found out that you were God and created your own life, like your own reality, wouldn't that be the day that there was just this freedom, and then you never went back? That's not how it is. That's not what happened, was it? No, because it was still a mind-made self that was just saying it was God now. Right? So we need to take a look at this and say, hey, you know what? Like I have been in my mind. I need to bring it back to myself, get some stability by saying things like just a thought, just a thought. That doesn't apply to me. That's just a thought. That's not me. That's just a thought. Just a thought. Breathing, right? Like actually focusing on your breathing for a little bit sometimes. Like get in touch with this essence, this presence inside of you, this being. You're a human being, not a human affirming all the time, not a human mind. You're a human being. You need to start to be more, right? There's power in being. Even in going like from a law of assumption standpoint, like what does it say? Be it to see it. What does it say? Like, hey, be this person, and you will start to see things. Like it's being something, but you want to just be the being, right? Not being something, being. Not I am this, the I am. Right? That's what you are. So the mind likes to tell you that you're this and that and this and that, and this person's this and that and this and that, and unconsciously judging things as this and that. But no, you are the I am. You are the God consciousness. You are the being. Right? So no wonder. And if we don't know this and we're lodged up here, all of our consciousness and our energy is just lodged up here, of course we're feeling not whole and complete. Of course people are maybe not acting so favorable because we're not whole. I mean, we are, but it's not realized yet because we're playing pretend. We're playing pretend God in the mind. And if that was the only thing that you're supposed to realize, that you were God in the mind, right? Not like some idea that you were God. This is what you're actually. If this is what you're supposed to realize, then why are you still suffering? Why are you still fearful? Why is everything not just a piece of cake now? It's because it's still an illusion. It's not. Just because you say you're God doesn't mean that you've realized that within. Just because the mind has an idea or learned from somebody that's like, oh, you're God. Everything's coming from you. The mind can make a little bit of sense of it. Like, oh, man, I guess that makes sense. I've been creating my reality. Okay. But as long as you're identified with it, the mind, there will always be fear. Always. And there will always be some form of lack, of incompleteness, right? So we want to, again, start to give ourselves freedom and choice to actually create our life without all this fear, without all this, oh, I need this to be whole and I need this whatever, like, and then projecting that onto people, and then because everyone has us pushed out, they have to reflect this. Right? And then we start the whole thing all over again. So we want to bring it back, keep some energy in your body. Tell yourself often, that's just a thought. Just a thought. The only reason that you are anxious or regretful or things like that is because you are buying into thoughts that are just thoughts. They are not who you are. So if you want the safety life, if you actually want to start to experience who and what you are, you have to realize this, that I'm not my mind. Those are just thoughts. This alone will bring you much stability. And from a stable place of not buying into this thought and that thought and this thought and that thought, and the opposite happens, and now, oh, I acted this way, oh, I shouldn't have done that. Like, think about this. How many times have you acted out something and right afterwards got the thought that was like, you shouldn't have done that? And then because you bought the thought, you're like, oh no, I shouldn't have done that. Well, why did I do that? I'm so stupid. I'm never going to be able to get what I want now. They're not going to forgive me. I shouldn't have done that. It looks so crazy. And then you're buying into that thought. And you're just keeping it going, right? But to actually get out of the mind, it's a thought. You actually have some choice now to say, you know what? I don't have to believe everything I think. I feel pretty stable right now. Yeah, so-and-so stopped talking to me, but I don't necessarily need them because I'm feeling really whole right now, and I'm going to tell a different story. I'm going to assign new meaning to things, because the meaning that I assign to things is how it starts to play out. This is freedom. This is choice. If you are identified with mind, you do not have the freedom that you think, and you do not have the choice that you think, even if the mind tells you that you do. But if you look closely, you'll see that you have acted in ways from believing in thought where it was almost like you didn't have a choice. You were just doing what you thought you needed to do right then, boom, and then you regretted it, and then you bought into that, and then you started to spiral, and then you did something else that you thought you shouldn't have done. All this stuff, all from believing thoughts. So, it's just a thought. You are not your mind. Until we start to really get this, it will just be a game of gain, fear of loss, loss. Gain, fear of loss, loss. Gain, fear of loss, loss. It's a revolving door. We want to bring it back to us. We want to bring it back to what you actually are. Actually have some freedom. Actually have some choice. Be able to go about your life in stability and love and in harmony, and be able to create meaning and new stories and call forth some experiences by actually using your mind instead of your mind using you. It starts with just a thought. That's all I got. See you guys soon.